I'd like to call to order the Springboro Board of Education meeting on Thursday, February 26, 2015. Roll call.
Regarding?
Here.
Petroni?
Here.
Malone?
Here.
Anderson?
Here.
Stuckey?
Here. I'd like to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 1.2, adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion? So moved. Is there a second? Second. Roll call.
Regarding?
Yes.
Petroni?
Yes.
Malone?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Stuckey?
Yes.
Motion passes. Item 1.3, approval of the February 12th, 2015 meeting minutes. Is there a motion? So moved. Second? Second. Roll call.
Regarding?
Yes.
Petroni?
Yes.
Malone?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Stuckey?
Yes.
Motion passes. Item 2.1, is there a report from the Springboro Education Association? Seeing none, move on to item 2.2, Springboro Classified Employees Association report. We can move on to 2.3, that's prearranged public speaking. I don't think anybody requested to speak. That will move into the treasurer's report.
Actually, the financials are posted. I had a couple questions. I'm not sure if I answered them all, so I'll make sure I kind of briefly run through it really quick. I had a question about our taxes appear to be low so far after half the year is over. And that's because we received 49% of our taxes in the first half and 51% of our taxes in the second half, so that's why it's a little bit low. But you'll see as we get the next half in that that's where the catch-up will be. And then also with any delinquencies from the first half usually are caught up also by the second half, so you'll see it come in there. And then I also had a question about the personnel services. How you can do that, the easiest way to tell them that is to take our total 5-year forecast amount for our salaries, divide them by 26, and that's our average per pay. Then you have to multiply that by how many pays we've had so far. We've had 3 pays in August and 3 pays in January, because those are 2 months that we have 3 pays. With every other month we only have 2. So if you multiply that by how many pays we've had so far, we're right on par. We're slightly over. And that's because we have had to hire a few aides due to special ed that we weren't anticipating. But other than that, we're really close on. So those were really the only 2 questions I had. And not really any other questions.
Slightly over?
We're about $100,000 over. And that actually can also be made up too, depending on, and it's really hard to say exactly how you're going to be on payroll because there's always overtime, there's always extra pay for things that have to happen throughout the year. It's never going to be exact, but when you have to project $25 million worth of payroll, $100,000, it's a pretty good, place to be if that's all your, your variance is. So actually really close up.
This report that we have, I'm trying to understand the difference plus or minus column. Is that only just, this is your budget to actual?
Yeah, and I actually think now that you're saying that, I don't know that I updated that exact column for January. It might be. I might just not have updated the, I did this a few weeks ago. So I'd have to actually look at that to see if I updated those numbers or if they're populated or not. But you can still ask the question.
Well, I guess the only place I see a number is 1% down the bottom. Is there any way to have some sort of projected plus or minus difference? So for instance, if the payroll, as you expressed, was 100,000 approximately over, this column somewhere would have a difference category versus just this number, which forces me to not know how to look at the, there's no picture for me here.
Gotcha. I have another spreadsheet that I have updated. That's a differences spreadsheet, which kind of tells you through this month, and then each column will show you how much of the year has passed to kind of tell you your variance. It's harder to do that on these because you have months, especially in the equipment and the supplies, that are mostly front-loaded, and a lot of the purchase services too that are front-loaded. So it appears that we're over, but we're really not. It's just because you spend more of those costs up front and then as you get through the year. So it's really not a fair estimate to say, oh, we're 90% spent, we're way over, we still have this many months to go, but not really, because the last several months you might only spend a small portion of money.
Yeah, I guess I'm not really, well, if it were something to be seen to ask that question, that would be good. I can't see anything to ask that question, so maybe the report you actually use is a better report to put on here than.
Right, it's just that that's a supplement report that I use for myself to make sure where I can go to him and say, hey, I think we're a little over here, we need to figure out why, and then we jump on it to see exactly why and make adjustments to make sure that that doesn't continue. And so I can provide that for you, no problem. But this is actually, I mean, that's why just the questions are easy too to ask, because I could even show that, but that's still not going to answer the question as to why, unless you ask.
Right, but I would, to be honest with you, I don't know what to ask. I didn't do the math that we're over. I'm not saying I don't know what to ask. It's just in this report. I think I've talked about this. I'm looking for something
which is,
where.
I think why I started that other report.
Yeah.
Just to kind of,
And so that way, if it were there, you know that there's a variance, and you know there's a question that would be asked on the variance,
right.
and therefore we'd say, oh, it's just 90%. I would love to have that availability.
Sure.
If that would be something to be as a carry forward, I think everybody can understand that.
that's okay.
Okay. Another question I have, I'm just trying to, I'm making sure I understand. So I'm looking at your annual revenue chart and your annual expenditure chart, and I just see something on this. So I kind of like the chart, you know, because it's got some history. So like in 2012, our revenue did not, our expenses did not exceed revenue.
In the specific month or?
No, just annually. I'm just looking at
2012?
just looking at the big,
Okay.
the nice historical. So then I look at 2013 and. Which I think that was the year is that the year we negotiated? That 2013 is the
Yeah,
year
that's the
we
year all of the new plans were put in place for everything, capital, textbooks.
Yeah, that's when we started buying.
That's the big
all
year
the
where
plans.
all of the first Kids First budget was implemented was in 2013.
And then and just for my, because I get this sometimes confused, 2013 means the beginning of 2012, September to 2013?
June 30th of 2013.
So
So
that
May would be when, I think May was when it was first put into place. And then that's when, starting in fiscal 14 and now 15, all of those plans are being carried out.
So in 2013, the plans began spending, and we also show that our revenues did not exceed, our expenses did not
Right,
exceed
but that's
revenues.
also because the reduced levy didn't take effect until 14 either.
Right.
So you won't have that, you'll have more revenue in that year than you're gonna have in 14.
And we didn't really buy any textbooks until this past year.
Right.
That's when we started buying the computers and the textbooks and everything that was in all the plans.
Yeah, I don't know what the reduced levy has to do with what our.
Well, because the revenue obviously would be less. So our expenditures, if they stay the same and our revenue's less, then it looks like we're spending more, but it's not, it's because we have less.
Again, in 2014, the reduced levy took place, and the expenses did nominally increase above revenue by about, in your world, about $300,000, which on a $44 million budget. Some people might say that's not too bad because, you know, it's the $25 million divided by 100. So it's not too bad. So I guess I'm just seeing that the revenue expense trajectory looks pretty nominal, and of course we still can't tell what 2015 is going to look like.
Right, but they are going to be, because in 14 and 15 are where all of the plans that were set forth in 13 are being carried out. So if we pass those in 13 and say, we're going to set aside $2.1 million for textbooks and $2 million for capital needs and $2 million for this, that's all going to get spent in those future years. And so, of course, those are going to be expenses that will have to be paid in those future years.
Yeah, again, I don't have that reference in front of me right now. I'm just trying to, we approved those plans in 2012, 2013.
It was actually May of 2013.
We approved the expenditures for the textbooks were actually approved on August 28th of 2011. But that said,
No, that's not true. Because May.
We didn't have those plans until I was superintendent here.
Yeah.
hold on. Yes, it is true. I sat in a board meeting in central office when Ms. Warner at the time and fifth failed levy and money showed up. And I'm just saying, the textbook plan for 2.7, so I go back to the forecast right after that, you'll see it. I wasn't on the board.
Are you talking about for 2011?
Yeah, I wasn't on the
There
board.
was no more than $200,000 in textbooks spent out until fiscal 14.
The board approved and authorized a $600,000 a year expenditure in 2011.
Right, but until it's expended, you won't see it on here. So that's, you approved it, okay, so the board approved it in the 5-year. But those monies, when you look at final numbers, it's what has been expended. So you can approve it, but until it's expended, it's not going to show on the 5-year forecast as an expense.
I'm not really certain what you're debating me on, so I'm not having a debate.
The debate is that you're approving something, but until you spend it, it's not going to reflect
That's not my conversation that I'm even having, so I don't understand this. So I guess all I'm trying to reflect under actual and where the historical show will show. We can have a discussion in more detail of budgets and forecasts if you want. I'm just reflecting here on your report,
Okay.
and I'm saying very consistent from this conversation. I'm not looking to have an argumentative conversation,
Oh,
so
no, you're
that,
not.
and I'm not trying to. So if I am, I come off that way. It's no intent. I'm just saying that as of June 30th, 2014, our budget was, according to these numbers, was nominally within reasonable tolerances based on revenue and expenses. How the plans play out this year will have to be seen, and I look forward to see how we go, because that's all I'm saying. I'm just looking at history right now. This is the history that we have, that's all. So I'm understanding this correctly, and how if anything else changes, that'll, we'll see where that goes. Because we bought buses, we loaned and borrowed buses, back in 2012, 2013. And
Yeah, we
started
actually leased
capital
everything.
improvements.
I think we leased the buses.
Now, we purchased, we did a 5-year mortgage on them, so the new ones you're doing, I don't know. What
The new ones we're buying outright, which is why you see the large expenditure.
Right, which is part of our plan.
Yeah.
Exactly, to take on no more debt, yeah. So, any case, I'd love to see how we're doing on our, if you can come up with a report that I can look at for the next meeting, so I can ask questions. We also, even if it's your report, I'll take a look at it. But I think it would be good that we just kind of track that, because as I've said in a couple of meetings, I have some concerns on, where we're at right now in a critical time. So, and I want to make sure we're just make everybody aware of that. I just have some concerns, but thank you.
Okay.
There's the-
Oh, yeah. Motion, is there a motion to approve the report? So, their financial statements. Second?
Second.
Roll call.
Regano.
Yes.
Petroni.
Yes, ma'am.
Malone.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Stuckey.
Yes.
Motion passes. Move on to superintendent's report.
Yeah, it's my recommendation to accept the following donations for the junior high show choir. That's $50 from Blair, $20 from Sellers, $20 from Shalise, I hope that's how you pronounce that, I apologize if not. $20 from Smith, $20 from Deckman, $20 from Jacobs, $20 from Eddington, and $20 from Johnson.
Is there a motion? Second?
Second.
Roll call.
Regano.
Yes.
Petroni.
Yes.
Malone.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Stuckey.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Yeah, this is the first reading of policy 2510. And before we do that, I'd like to say a couple things. Of course, my staff is a little stressed. I know there was some discussion of this, and there needed to be a legal perspective. I didn't get that because I wanted to meet with you guys tonight. And the reason is, our legal fees have been out there. And so we've been looking at them today, and as of today, from February of last year to now, we have saved $71,000 in legal fees. And one of the things I have found that helps with that is instead of running and getting an opinion on all these things that we have questions about, is just to talk them out in the board meeting. So a couple of the questions that were brought up on the policy, which I fully understand, on the, see where I'm at here, on the first page, and I apologize I wasn't at this meeting. I've missed a lot of superintendent's meetings because I want to keep these on Friday, but it is very tough for me to be able to go to budget, finance, and things on Friday. If you talk to our county superintendent, he'd probably tell you, Todd's missed 60% of our meetings because I typically try to go to these. And on this day, I had a family issue, so I didn't get to go. But at the same time, I just wanted you all to know, no one defied anyone's comment. It was me that said, let's talk about the board meeting first, and then if all 5 board members feel it's needed, we'll get it taken care of. So one of the questions talked about, it's the legal responsibility of the Board of Education to approve all textbooks used as part of the educational program of this district. No such textbook will be approved which is not on a list duly filed at the Office of the State Superintendent of Public Instruction. The law 3329.01, it states, before any such textbooks or electronic textbooks may be adopted and purchased by any school board, must, on or before the first day of January of each year, file of the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction a statement that lists the wholesale price to the school districts in Ohio will be no more than the lowest listed price. So one of the reasons this is in place is to make sure that people like me don't go work a deal on the side with someone where the state public, there's no deals being made. There's lists to make sure that things are being controlled in terms of what we're buying. The other question, I think, was about the substitution, alteration, or revision of any textbook within 4 years of its selection or adoption shall require a 4/5 vote of the board. Now understand that's within 4 years of its selection, which would mean it's a relatively new book. The reason for that is 332908, at any regular meeting, the Board of Education of each local city or exempted village school district shall determine by majority vote of all members elected or appointed under division section 331171 of Ohio Revised Code. So basically, both of those are really put into place so that, let's say you get a new superintendent that decides, I don't like everyday math, so I want to go spend another $500,000 on something else when you already have a brand new product. That makes it to where you have to have that super majority of the board to be able to do that. It's, to me, it's really a cost control. So I wasn't there at the policy meeting. Again, I apologize, which it's not uncommon for superintendents not to go to those. But if there was a different conversation, perhaps we can discuss that. But those are the 2 main issues.
Well, just as a point of clarification, you read law that stated majority.
Yes. 4/5, yes.
No, you said majority.
Unless it's 4/5 on one and then the majority.
Well, I don't know, the
Well-
law you agreed was majority.
Well, the law states it's 4/5 of the elected body, which unfortunately on a 5-member board, that's a supermajority where you need a 4/5 vote. It's not a majority of those present, which would be a 3-2.
No disrespect.
Right.
Just asking what you're referencing on the majority. There's no about 4/5.
No, in the new policy, and keep in mind, we get these from Neola. We didn't write these, and Neola has their own panel of attorneys before they send those to us. What they have written is substitution, alteration, or revision of any textbook within 4 years of its selection and adoption shall require a 4/5 vote of the board.
Right. And I think I was raising that question because I don't understand why a supermajority would, because I think, if I understood the law you just cited last, if we stay with, it's the legal responsibility of the Board of Education to approve all textbooks, just on that clause. And let's say this board, there's a textbook, John Smith, Q Roberts, and Jim and I and Dave like it, but you 2 guys don't. I think we can vote that textbook in because we have a majority vote, that will pass.
It's 2 different things. This is, and here's the catch on this one, within 4 years of its selection.
Well, I understand that. But
If you want to change the whole adoption, because for example, Journey, remember we spent $400,000 on it. If you wanted to change that right now, we would have to have a 4/5 vote. If it was beyond 4 years, you would need a 3-2 vote.
Well, that's if we adopt this. What I'm disagreeing is I don't think we need a supermajority to make that change. I just think a majority should, unless there's something new in the law.
Would you repeat the section of law that you read?
At any regular meeting, the Board of Education of each local city exempted village school district shall determine by majority vote of all members elected or appointed under division of section 331117 of the Ohio Revised Code of such textbooks or electronic textbooks shall be used in schools under its control. But what this is going to is if it's within 4 years.
Well, I can see the logic of having to have a supermajority within 4 years because, excuse me, a textbook adoption is the major commitment that a district makes in terms of a given type of textbook and material. And when you make that decision, you want to make it informed, and you ought to make it in a serious fashion, not one that is going to be changed at a whim. And it's to me, it's a philosophical thing. We're committing philosophically to a certain approach, a certain textbook, and we're going to see it through for 5 years. And if in the next board election there were 3 people who all of a sudden come on and say, I don't like that textbook, we're going to throw it out. You know, the textbook adoption should be larger than a board election. It's just a bigger commitment. And so I understand. It's, to some degree, to me, it's like amending the Constitution. It takes more than a majority. It takes an overwhelming number of people, percentage-wise, who want to do a certain thing to make it happen. So I can understand the idea here that within a 4-year period, I think it would be very difficult to defend adopting a textbook and then within 5 years changing it.
Well, from a taxpayer's perspective, I think it's a great idea. It's a great control variable.
I almost feel like we're talking about a couple different scenarios here, because the initial adoption, which is the first year, which would be the first year, and correct me if I'm wrong, you know, if 3 of the 5 board members were to approve the initial adoption, then that is different than this. This here kind of states that, oh my gosh, in 4 years we're saying this just doesn't fit, and it is not good for kids, and it's not a good decision. And then you've got an additional person that has to step in and make that change. So the initial adoption could be a three-person vote yes, and we bring those materials in, as opposed to this, which is could be 2 different scenarios.
That's my point, though. If it's outside the law, I don't see the difference. Bringing an initial adoption of $700,000 or $7 million is a pretty big decision. Really, you hope you have a majority during that decision. Bringing in another new adoption, because we have a political whim of changing from apples to oranges, is going to sit there and look at the treasurer and say, oh, by the way, we just spent $1 million on books. Let's take that other $1 million that we don't have and put it to books, and let's all of a sudden.
Well, this will really control that not happening.
Well, I don't think you need a supermajority. I think it's counterintuitive, because there's so many other factors. I mean, it took Tammy, Ms. Strickberg, excuse me, a lot of energy to come up with a recommendation, and a lot of thought, and your entire staff to bring an adoption forward after literally, I mean, I don't know how much we pushed to say, hey, this was approved in 2011. It took 5 years or 4 years to make it happen. So I guess I just don't see it doesn't make any sense to me. That's all. I understand what you're saying, Dr. Malone, but it doesn't make any sense to me.
Well,
I think, again, my final comment, I think that sometimes money is not the driving factor when it comes to making a change like this. If certain people have very strong feelings, they're going to go ahead and try and make that happen regardless of cost. And you're right, from the logical point of view, that's why I made the comment about it's hard to defend such a change 4 years into a cycle. But I certainly think it can happen, and that's why the language
I just think there's 2 different votes that are taking place in this.
I agree. I just don't think my policy needs a supermajority.
I guess I would ask is, you know, if the law doesn't require that restriction, why does the board want to restrict itself beyond what the law says? I was thinking that you were quoting the law that said that if it was within 4 years, we needed to have a supermajority vote.
That's what the law says.
I wonder if that isn't the law somewhere else other than the section that you cited.
No, that's that section that he cited. The majority of those elected, that means a supermajority for a board of 5 would be a 4-5 vote. Yeah, it does. Majority of those elected, not.
The majority of those elected would be 3.
Well, I think I think it's just from what I understand,
I think it's good control there.
I think, go ahead, Jim, finish, I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, I guess I just struggle with putting more restrictions. Law on ODE puts so many restrictions on us, why would we want to put more on ourselves? And I guess I hear the argument that it would be politically unwise, but, you know, a board weighs those things. And so, I guess I don't, if it's, I don't see the point in trying to restrict ourselves beyond what the law would restrict us.
I had several comments. I didn't know if you were going through a few more comments on this policy, because I just read it the other day when it was published, so I saw it for the first time.
No, those are the main two I wanted to address. The others, I mean, the team is here as well to talk about the discussion that took place there.
Well, I think this policy needs to go back to committee for several reasons, not because of its purpose or intent or because of the 4-5 vote. To me, as I read it, literally, I take the first paragraph, well, I take the commentary that it is a board's obligation to establish curriculum for its district. And so I take that as seriously as you can as a board, because we have very few decisions that we get to really influence at the end of the day. And you read the policy and you start off with that, and this Neola starts off with that, so presuming Neola is the author of this entire policy, which I heard you say they are, we go into the first paragraph that gives us that authority, and then we go down into the paragraph on page 2 that begins with, the board shall consider for approval only those textbooks which have been selected and recommended for their consideration by the superintendent. And I'm trying to think, if it's the board's obligation to make the decision, this policy then limits us only to accept what you say. And I'm not saying you're not a good discerner of textbooks, or that there'd be a whole process. So that, to me, feels conflicted in a way, because it literally feels like it takes away the board's authority, because we're limiting and narrowing our capacity.
But what you're wanting to do is take away the superintendent's authority. That'd be like Congress saying, American people, we want all of you to vote. But if we don't really like your idea, we as Congress reserve the right to pick who we want.
Well, at the end of the day, Congress has the right to veto the president, and they're trying to do that, or break a veto. So I feel like if we use that example, this has some similarities where we take that veto authority away, from what if I'm reading it correctly. And again, these are my comments because I just saw it for the first time. The other areas that concern me are lack of definitions on the factors that would decide, because I think textbooks, we went through a discussion, I think, in 12 and your first year here, Mr. Petrie, where everybody seems to acknowledge that textbooks have a slant or bias. And I think the commentary was that those textbooks have been doing that. Some people use the word indoctrination for years, decades. And if that's the case, then we all accept that. I guess maybe we all accept it. But the definitions here from A through, well, paragraph A, the word suitability for the maturity level. I don't know who decides and what that definition is, suitability. Freedom from bias. You know, maybe freedom from bias may be more accurate. Maybe it should say something about being accurate. Because there have been books that have been called out by Pearson and others that have lost accuracy, historical perspective and accuracy versus bias. Because I don't know who defines bias. My bias, your bias, public schools bias. There is no bias in public education, per se. So I think the definitions are weak, and it doesn't give me as a board much guidance if I were sitting here with a textbook to say, well, how do I reconcile bias? Whose bias is it? The other issue is D, extent to which the content will make it possible for the student to achieve the learning objectives of the course of study and the educational outcomes of the district. Very broad goal. Don't know if that's the high school course of study, if that's the junior high course of study, or if that's the teacher's individual lesson plans course of study, which we've talked about. Is that a syllabus? I don't understand how to reconcile that. And F is interesting. Impact on community standards of taste. I don't know if we've ever defined what Springboro's community standards of taste are, or Clear Creek's community standards of taste. So I don't know manner of selection. very broad. Does that mean that there's a selection process that's been established by the superintendent behind this policy?
That would be a guideline that the superintendent's responsible for doing. It shouldn't be in a policy. Most of these would be guidelines.
This is in considering the approval of any proposed textbook. The board recommends the following factors. This is us, the board. So we're saying to you and the administration through these A through I, these are our tenets, our standards. And I'm saying these standards for me as a board member appear overly broad and very non-definitive with lack of specificity that could lead us to a place that has some educational challenges or maybe unnecessary debate. And that perhaps we can send it back to committee and actually make a board direction that has some definition to the word suitability, to freedom of bias, to these things.
We will do some of those things in the guidelines, but I'll be honest with you, the committee has looked at this for some time, and at this point, it's in the board's hands. There's the 5 of you are able to make a decision on this, but the committee was real clear on what they wanted out of this.
Can I ask who comprises the committee?
That would be me. It's a superintendent's committee. It's
Can I
not
ask-
board driven.
Can I ask who the members are? I'm not participating in that, I'm just curious.
What difference does that make?
I'm trying to understand the makeup of the committee so I can understand where the,
We will all email you a list.
is that something you can't answer tonight, sir?
Well, we have almost 20 different committees. I don't have them all memorized.
Are they all staff or are they made up of the committee? I don't go to the.
There are
There are-
committee members on this.
There are
yes.
parents,
And board members.
there are us, there are
Mr. Stuckey.
Mr. Stuckey,
Mr. Regano.
Mr. Regano.
We have at least 3 community members. We have principals and/or assistant principals. We have the director of curriculum, director of special education, business manager.
If I could
Mrs.
ask,
Cook.
who was on the former committee when it was board driven? Who were the members of that? Two
We're,
people, two board members.
we're here right now to discuss as one board member, the other board members can let whatever loose language they prefer, that's where this goes. I'm not comfortable with the language, and I think it should go back to people.
Board policy should not
I'll
be written to be guidelines that micromanages the school district. They should be written, that's what our job is as educators. That's what the taxpayers pay us to do.
May I interrupt?
I'm not asking to
Just for a moment.
I'm not.
We did, Mr. Petroni, speak to those issues in the last committee meeting and talking about and looking at these regulations and these guidelines is that through the curriculum department, when we are adopting textbooks, we had quite a discussion, correct, about the way we would go about getting the materials and disseminating that to the community, to parents, to staff, and how we would go about using those guidelines to then come to a conclusion of what we would then bring to the board. And in those, the considerations that we would use are, whether they be vague or not, would be those of what the board recommends. At that point in time, we are then giving you a yes or a no ability. Instead of it being, well, is this one better than this one and this one? All of that is taken out by prior discussion. And what we then bring to the board through the superintendent is a consensus of all of those people of we believe this is the best textbook to be purchased that matches the curriculum in which we are entitled to deliver. At that point in time, then it allows you, the board, you, the member of the board, to look at those textbooks and say, yes, I agree that the process has been duly done and that this is what needs to be selected, or I don't like this and we need to look at something else as a board of 5.
Right. Thank you. I'm not debating the aspect of getting there. I'm saying that the definitions or the words freedom from bias are not specific enough for me, not clear enough to also suggest the importance of accuracy.
You know, the challenge of some of this discussion is kind of contradictory to some degree. And I say that because, you know, we say in one breath that we don't want to restrict ourselves, but then we're going to restricting ourselves. And I get all of these are components of you know, and the ability that we have to collectively get a group of people, whether it be community members and teachers, professionals, to look at these materials and to drive it down to the ones that we want to really look at with a fine-tooth home. And that's a process that takes a lot of time. You know, we've got teachers in the classroom, you know, we've got to pull those teachers to do so. We've got parents that are helping, and it's a process, is my point. And so when we say we want to restrict ourselves, those are those guidelines that Mr. Petrie's talking about, that those are the guidelines that we can follow. But if we constrict ourselves from moving this process through, then, you know, I feel like we're spinning in circles at times at something that gives us the latitude to move forward and using materials for our students and our teachers. And it just, what's challenging to me and for everyone else that looks at these materials is, you know, we can beat these up and talk about them for days. When you're talking freedom from bias, I mean, well, that could be a discussion that'll take hours when you really think about it. So are we going to put ourselves in such a pigeonhole that we can't make decisions, and we're going to prolong this process that we can never get the materials in the hands of those that are teaching kids?
So to the extent that you're referring to the needs of the process, the way I perceive this document for me as a board member, which is the only thing the board members do have the ability of commenting on, controlling as if the policy belongs to the board. Mm-hmm. We understand that this is a recommendation from a committee, and I'm fine with those recommendations. And in fact, I'm fine with the cost of the books being a factor. I'm fine with the appearance and durability being a factor. I'm fine to the extent of integrated continuity being a factor. Those are all good, in my opinion, as one person. Good guidelines, good tenets, and you can work within those however you want. The others that I've mentioned, and I'll stop here because I feel like you're stating I'm slowing down a process, and when I'm saying from my policy perspective, David Petroni as one board member, the freedom from bias, as you said, could take hours and hours of debate. I see we have bias and it's already been admitted in our books that we have today in our building. So if we have the bias that's there, then how will you take that forward? I mean, we've admitted here last year that our books are biased. I mean, they've been doing that for years. So freedom of bias, it's not going to change. It seems like it's hollow to me. I'd rather have a better thing you could focus on, like accuracy. Bias will be there because you've all admitted, as the professionals in the industry, that bias is in every textbook. I mean, that's what I heard. So I say, why be freer from it when you can't achieve that as a goal? I want accuracy. So thank you for the time.
Just to add a couple, if I could, 0160 and 0167, our own policies have 4/5 majority vote. That's what needs to take place. But the only thing I'd like to add, and Dave, perhaps I was a little pointed, I apologize, but with these committees, when they go to do a textbook adoption, I mean, you have got a long line of people that's given a voice. And basically, it's my job to hear the voice of the people and recommend it. And when it's suggested that superintendent's taken out of that, basically what it's saying is this voice is not going to be heard. That's what the board is here to do. That's the offensive part of that. And that's why, I don't know if it's the way it's phrased or how you meant it, but that's, I think, how people are perceiving that.
Well, thanks for that clarification. But no, I think the example is that I believe that takes away the veto power of the board. That's all.
Well, you can vote no. It says right there, you can vote no on the textbook adoption, and then I got to go back to the drawing board. You can keep voting no until you get what you want.
Mr. Anderson, I have a couple of comments. I think that Neola did not do a good job in writing this policy, and I think it continues to be work. Back in December, I think it was December 12th, we had a policy meeting, and I raised some issues, which I raised again in February. And as this policy is presented to us, not one of those issues is addressed. Mr. Petroni asked, who's on the committee? Well, it's Mr. Stuckey, myself, and Mrs. Vinderman is a parent, and everybody else, I believe, is a school employee, at least the people that participated in those meetings. Sometimes I feel like I'm, I guess, arguing against the brick wall because I'm not sure that the perspective is being shared that there's a difference in responsibility between the board and the administration. And I'm not sure that perspective is always understood, and I'm going to try to explain that. I don't have any intention of changing the process the way it works today. I think it's working fine. But let me read a couple of items from the law. These are referenced right in this policy. 3313.21, Section A. The Board of Education of each school district shall be the sole authority in determining and selecting all of the following to be used in the schools under its control. Number 1, textbooks and reading lists. Number 2, instructional materials. I think I left off, well, no. So, we are the sole authority by law. We are the sole authority in determining and selecting all of the following to be used in schools under control. Now, we have latitude in deciding how we determine and select it, but we are the sole authority. That's what the law
That's
says.
our job to provide that to.
Mr. Petrie, I'm not trying to, we can debate in a minute. Let me just tell you what the law says. I mean, that's a quote out of the law. I copied it. It's right here in front of me. Okay? And then item 3 was academic curriculum. I knew there were 3 of them. Okay? In 3313, 21.2, also referenced by Neola in this policy, it says the Board of Education of each school district shall provide an opportunity for parents to review the selection of textbooks and reading lists, instructional materials, and the academic curriculum used in the school district. We shall provide that. It's not optional. The policy also references OAC, Ohio Administrative Code 3301-3503B, which has nothing to do with this policy. I don't know why Neola has that in there, but it talks about schools that have failed to meet adequate yearly progress for 2 consecutive years shall develop strategic plans that include a 3-year continuum. I mean, it has nothing to do with this. I have no idea why Neola included that. To me, it's obviously stated.
No, there's a reason for that. If we were a felony district, it would be better understood.
But 332901, adoption and purchase of textbooks. Mr. Petrie cited part of this, but he didn't cite the whole law. And it starts out, any publisher of textbooks or electronic textbooks in the United States must file in the office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction a statement that the list wholesale price to school districts in Ohio will be no more than the lowest list wholesale price available to school districts in any other state. That's what I read. You left off the first clause. You started that before.
Well, I'm gonna read the whole thing to you and insult your intelligence.
Let me read the whole thing to you.
I'm sorry for interrupting, but this is rude and unprofessional to continually read to other board members, to the audience, and to whomever. And I'm sorry, I'm probably out of order.
You are out of order.
But I've really reached a point where meeting after meeting, you read items and trying to get us off subject.
Mr. Anderson, may I have the floor back? Continue making points.
I would ask that you please condense it.
Just, if you're in favor of all these things, you said that from the beginning, I just asked you to abbreviate this if you could.
Well, my point is that, at least for 3329 here, is that the statement is putting requirements on publishers to put a list out of wholesale prices. And then the board is to choose books from this list of publishers. It's not a list of books. The policy that Neola has presented to us, if you go down and you read the policy, it says the board shall consider for approval, it says no such textbook will be approved which is not on a list duly filed in the office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction. There is no such list of textbooks. I went to ODE and tried to find it, Mr. Anderson. And you know what ODE says? From the ODE website, the Ohio Department of Education does not approve textbooks or maintain an approved textbook list.
That's the law, that's not.
No, it's
something we
not
can
the
control.
law. I'm just,
ORC said
you
that.
you have misinterpreted by leaving out the first part of it. The first part of it says that the ODE keeps a list of publishers who promise that their wholesale price will be the lowest in Ohio that it is anywhere in the country. That's what that says. And it says that we are to buy books from those publishers. There is no such list. There is no such list that ODE or the
Mr. Regano, I apologize, but all 5 of you are highly college-educated people. I mean, I would have to read the whole, I'm not gonna read that to you, but that's insulting your intelligence.
Mr. Petrie, this was the debate that Mr. Pennell and I had, okay? And I just said, you know, I know what I read. I'm an intelligent person. I can understand this. Let's just have the attorney figure it out. And you just said, well, you didn't want to spend the money. Well, all I'm saying is, let's just strike this thing about having to require having to purchase off this list from the state superintendent. Number one, the list doesn't work. Semiola's draft is wrong. Number two, we just got done listening to a section that says the local board is the sole authority in textbooks determination. Why would you want to restrict yourself? Why would we want to restrict ourselves to some list that doesn't exist, by the way, that the state superintendent has? I'm just saying, let's take away the restriction. I'm not trying to restrict anything here. I'm taking away restrictions. There is no such list, so you'd never find it anyway, but at least according to the ODU website. So I don't understand what the argument is here. I'm trying to make it easier for you, and you're arguing against me. Now,
It's a first reading.
well, I think it needs to be rewritten. That's my point, Mr. Anderson. I mean, that piece is clearly wrong. The other piece that I have, that I think is in direct violation of the law, and I read the section that pointed out that parental review is required and not optional, is we have a line in here that says, the superintendent shall develop a plan for the review and recommendation of textbooks to ensure staff participation, and that parents and members of the community are, where appropriate, are consulted where appropriate in the selection process. Well, it's not a decision of whether it's appropriate or not, it's a shall. They have to be included in that selection process. And so Neola has got, and I understand they are, but we're talking about policy that's been put in front of us that's wrong. And I'm just asking that we fix the things that are wrong. So those two things are just contrary to what's been put out in the law. Now, I had also suggested to the committee that we, and this is, I guess, a fine point, that I object to this line that says the board shall consider for approval only those textbooks which have been selected and recommended for consideration by the superintendent. Now, I would like to see that go away. Not that I'm trying to change the policy or undermine, not that I'm trying to change the process or undermine the superintendent's authority, but I use this illustration. Would Congress ever pass a law that says will only pass laws that are recommended by the president? No, it would never happen. Congress has some authority, the president has different authorities, and to me, it's just a separation. Now, the response in the committee was, well, that's not a fair analogy because the superintendent is the employee of the board. Well, I guess I would extend the analogy this way. Would we pass a policy that says the director of curriculum will only consider English textbooks that are recommended by the English department? And I would say that's a bad policy because we give the executive director of curriculum authority to make those decisions. And we wouldn't want to undermine that authority. And so while I would expect that the English department's always consulted in that case, and that those recommendations are given high weight, or those comments are given high weight, we wouldn't take that authority away from the executive director of the curriculum or the superintendent by instituting a rule that says that we're only going to consider recommendations that follow a particular process. And that's really my point in taking this out. I'm not trying to change the process. It's a fine point, but I would just take this sentence out because I think that it's, by using my analogies, it's just kind of a interference in the lines of authority. Now, I do agree with Mr. Petroni on the list of criteria, and I do think that we should at least add to that list of criteria that correctness and accuracy of the material is a criteria on which we should base the selection. I mean, if we're not, this is a laundry list of things that you might consider. Shouldn't the correctness and accuracy be one of the most important things that we consider? And so I would like to see that added to the policy.
So have you brought up a number of things. Have those been communicated or emailed to?
I communicated these things in December, and I communicated them in February, and I believe in December I emailed them. I might have emailed Mark, if I don't recall, it's been a while ago.
But again, the committee's role, and this is one of the things that I promised you, was not to make decisions. It was to give me advice, to recommend to the board, and ultimately it's the board's decision what goes in the policy.
Well, I think that a board member is a member of a committee, but they are just that, a member of the committee. And there are other members too. And if the board member's input is considered by the committee, but in the end decided that, no, we're not going to include that, I respect that as the right of the committee. And if the policy comes to us in a form that a board member doesn't like, then the prerogative is there to vote no. But I don't think that a board member should unduly influence a committee and in essence try and force their will upon the committee when it's still at the formative stage.
I guess you're saying it's okay to be wrong? The language is okay to be legally wrong?
Well, I would ask you, please not tell me what I'm saying. I've tried to make my point as to what I was saying, and you can have your opinion if something is wrong, illegal, etc.
Well, no.
But please don't indicate that I am saying it's okay for something to be this way or the other way. I've stated what I believe the role of the board member is in a committee.
We're not.
No, let me be very clear for you, Dr. Maloney. I've reviewed this, and I gave you the citations here this evening. This policy does not conform with the law. Okay, Mr. Petrie has declined to go get a legal opinion on that, but I can tell you, I can read. I'm not a dumb person. The law was pretty plain, and it's clear that in the two provisions that I cited, it's clearly not compliant. Now, when we get into it,
Right? I mean, the law says, and I've got the law here, the law does say there's a list. If there's not a list, that's not our fault there's not a list. But us having it in there, what the law says for us to have in there, we have it in there. So if there is no list, that's not shame on us, that's shame on whoever, ODE, or whoever doesn't have a list.
It's not a list of textbooks. The law says there's a list of publishers. I don't want to go back through the ground I've already covered. But, when the committee doesn't respond, Dr. Malone, to valid criticisms made on 2 different occasions of this policy that Neola generated, I have no recourse but to come here to the board and explain to you what I tried to explain to the committee. And I think that, they see trying to strike this language, particularly about the superintendent's recommendation, as some kind of a usurpation of the superintendent's authority. That's not my intent at all. I just think that there's a certain respect of the lines of authority that we should cross on that. And that was that one fine point that I don't think is a violation of the law, but I just say,
Mr.
Well, I think everybody's in agreement that the board is the sole decision maker. I don't think there's any argument with that. And I will say, we always talk about doing things in the public and in the sunshine. We certainly vetted this out in every way that there is. So I think we need to move on to the next item.
Now, I guess what I need to know, Mr. Anderson, is what we're going to do about these things that I think violate the law. I mean, is the board just going to not to get a legal opinion and then vote on adoption of this next time?
I'd like for, if you would send Mr. Petrie, and I know you said you did before, you couldn't remember who you sent it to, but send it to him and copy me. And I'd like to look at that, review that, and
You know, I'd be happy to send it to Neola. We pay them for these and their attorneys write these. I'd be happy to send it to them. All I'm saying is, we already know we're taking a hit from the state budget. We spend tens of thousands of dollars getting opinions since the 3 years I've been here. If the 5 of you, based on policy, if I think the request is unreasonable, I can ask the 5 of you to give me a directive. It will cost $1,000 to $2,000 for basically them to tell us what Mrs. Floyd just said. I mean, you're right, Mr. Gunn, but it's what the law says. So you can change these policies however you like, but
Mr.
that's the law.
Petrie, you keep asserting that's what the law says, and I've said over and over again, the law says, and the Ohio Department of Education website supports what I said. They keep a list of publishers. You can go out and find a list of publishers. That's the page that I reached, and right at the top of the page it says, we do not have a list of textbooks approved.
Well, then perhaps we need to send an email to the
Maybe
state
we need to talk
superintendent
about
the
and
policy
say you're
is
not following the law. You need to get your list up or do something about the law.
Mr. Petrie, I think you had a great idea about maybe kicking something back to Neola and put it in their court, maybe these questions that
Right.
Mr. Agano's raised. And if it comes back that since they're lawyers and we're paying them, that's a great idea. And I also step down, thanks for pointing me to the policy on the 4/5 vote. It would be nice if they would reference that here as a note too for the
Right.
4/5 for the textbooks, because I did miss that, so my apology for raising that, but it'd be cool if we can.
Sure.
You know, I think it's like 167, I think it's.
Right,
0.167.
So we'll get this back to Neola.
Just email me, Mr. Anderson, and I, like Charles requested, your comments, and I'll forward those to Neola. We have our contact person that we deal with. You met him a couple times yourself.
Okay.
I guess my only reservation with that is they got it wrong the first time. I'm not sure I have the confidence in getting it right the next time. But we can pursue that.
They are responsible if they guide us in the wrong direction. We'll have to look back at Neola's contract, but they are responsible for that if we encounter any type of litigation based on advice they've given us.
So move on to item 5.1, Mr. Snell.
Mr. President, members of the board, for your approval, the approval of the lunch prices for 2015-16, as we talked about last week at the work session.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Regano,
Yes.
Petroni, Malone,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Stuckey.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Mr. President, members of the board, for your recommendation, approval of a contract with Classic Student Tours for the junior high Washington DC trip in October of 2015.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call?
A quick question?
Oh,
Yes.
Just quick.
Go ahead.
Same price as last year?
It has gone up approximately $40 from last year. But the 3 of the other companies that I had checked with last year and got quotes from this year went up. One went up $34, one went up $51. So everybody was right about the same place as this increase was this year.
Thank you.
Roll call?
Regano,
Yes.
Petroni, Malone.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Stuckey.
Yes.
Item 6.1, board member comments. Mr. Stuckey?
None tonight.
Okay. Mr. Petroni?
Dave went to the wardrobe, he has on his best.
See, I wore my tent tonight,
Oh,
Charles.
you did.
Was that
Nothing.
Mr. Pagano?
Yeah, I guess the question, issue came up amongst, in the conversation with the community member as to whether or not the board is still standing behind its Borough Fest resolution. And I said, well, I can't imagine that the board wouldn't. But I thought I would bring it up and just make sure that we're all still firmly behind that resolution. I think that's all.
Dr. Malone?
No, thanks.
Okay, I don't have any public announcements?
Well, Mr. Regano stole my thunder there. We actually had a meeting for the Borough Fest yesterday at Clear Creek, and we had band boosters, athletic boosters. We had all of the PTOs but one or two. They're all involved in what we're doing now is Mr. Bruder and Mr. Ziegler. They're the two parents really heading it up, looking at the different events and things of that nature, and people just taking those and owning those. And really, the high school football team and the high school marching band, this Saturday morning of that, go out of town to their camp. So we're going to have a kickoff that Friday night, and honor all of these kids and celebrate what they're getting ready to set off to do for a memorable time of life. So it's my understanding also that they have a carnival that they've already booked. Looking at the gentleman who's going to do the pulled pork and different things of that nature. So Cook Family Fun Day is going to continue a lot of the events that they have, like 50 different events. So it's really going to be a nice family-oriented event that hopefully will bring the community together. That's the ultimate purpose of it. So thanks for bringing it up, or I forgot.
Okay. Any future considerations? Talk about in the future.
Yeah, I want to bring one up.
Sure.
You know, the governor's budget is an issue for us. And you know, I've spent some time reviewing, well, in email dialogue with Ms. Floyd and now Mr. Strasser about the governor's budget. And what are we going to do about that? Because if you take the governor's budget, you know, actually year one is okay, right? We're getting a 10% increase. But year two, the whammy starts coming and we have a 3% decline. But if you project it out even farther, it gets to be pretty drastic. And to the point where right now, of the state, of the standard state funding, we have, what is it, 39% share? So what that means is that you know, we're already subsidizing other districts, but at the 39%, I'm not sure how to describe the math, but if we were at 100%, we would be getting the full amount that the state provided, but we're at 39%. Okay, so the problem is if you extend this governor's budget out enough years, we actually end up at the minimum of 5%. In other words, we would get 5% of the state standard funding, which I guess is going up to $6,000, right? So we'd get 5% of $6,000 a student. I think it would be in 2019, something, maybe 2020, but you know, out there, which is next to nothing. And so that's the effect of this budget. And I don't know if our state legislators know this. The governor's recommended this, so the process now is with the state legislature to fine-tune this budget and ultimately pass the budget. And my suggestion is that we invite Senator Shannon Jones and Representative Ron Mag, who represent our district, to a board meeting so that we can explain to them the impact, that if this formula was to continue, what that impact would be. And so, you know, Mr. Strasser said, you know, this is complicated enough that he really felt that the state reps and senators were just now starting to get informed about it. And I think, you know, particularly those that represent us might benefit if we gave them a presentation that Mr. Strasser has given to us, not in person, but you know, in documents. If we were to give that presentation to them, then they would understand what would be the effect on Springboro's budget going through. So perhaps that might influence their vote.
Just since you brought that up, is there anything that OSBA is going to be doing on this on behalf of districts who are taking a hit, or is it too controversial for them? Does anybody know? Because that's what their Ohio School Board Association.
I knew that they're talking, I knew that in March, there was going to be some open sessions where you can speak out to the legislators as to how the second year is going to stuff. Those are the dates in March. I have the dates out there. And it's an email that we got from OSBA when they talk about the updates of the new proposed bill that budget. But I mean, I can send those out obviously, but I'll definitely be going. I'm sure a lot of districts around here will be going to speak out on it. It is going to be a drastic change for a lot of districts, especially the wealthier districts. So it seems like it's on the income. So yeah, I think the louder we speak, maybe the more they'll hear. I know that there are been a lot of talks now that they're finally getting it off the list of how it's actually affecting all the districts. And I don't think that maybe when this original formula was thought out, that they looked anywhere past this 2 years. But when you read the governor's budget, it specifically explains how they intend on carrying this formula into the future. But I don't know that they calculated what that would look like. And when we do that, that's when the next 2 years after this first budget would be devastating to a lot of districts. So you're right, once we go down to 5%. What that means to us is 95% of our funding comes from the local taxpayers. Because the less we get from the state, the more you have to get from local. And that's the problem. There's no way to.
And right now, we're, what, roughly
30
65, 35?
Yeah, 39% of our funding comes from the state, or it comes from local.
So I guess my suggestion, Mr. Anderson, is that we ask Mr. Petrie to extend that invitation to our representatives.
We've met with them already.
Well, I know you have, but.
We'll invite them. I'm sure they'll be eager to come.
I would like them to see the presentation of the impact. And
They've heard about it, let me tell you.
Well, I'd like them to come here and hear about it.
Mrs. Floyd didn't leave out any details.
Well, again, I was focusing on our reps, because those are the ones who are.
They direct you to them. If you try to
reacting
talk to
on our
others,
behalf.
they'll just send you to the ones that are through your district.
It's that later is the education committee chair, I think, is still, she may have a different position to take because it's broadly.
Anyone we can talk to, I'm happy to.
I will say though, I mean, we called Mrs. Jones and she met with us that morning, so she was very responsive, but there's only so much people like that can do. They can voice our opinion and she promised that she would. But, it could change again in 2 years.
Just
These
as it
budgets
is,
always
there's
change.
600 school districts.
Yes, and actually about 300 of the 608 are actually being affected negatively. So to me, that speaks loudly. If over half the districts are losing with this, that's not a good formula. If that many are losing. So hopefully, when we first talked with Shannon, it was in the very, very, very early stages. And she did say, you know, this has got a long way to go. It's going to probably change and take on many different phases before it's approved. So don't take it to the bank yet, but it's going to happen. But hopefully, as people get out there and talk about it and they actually see the impact, especially like by these calculations when we can do it long term, and what happens to the 5%, you know, to us after the full phase and after 5 years. You know, there's no way that local schools can sustain that. I mean,
Well, we
you
took a
lose
hit
all
like this
that-
year ago, didn't we?
No way. 39% of our funding, the lowest I think we've ever gotten is maybe 28 or 29% from the state. If we go down to 5%, that means we get 5% from the state, the only other money we get is local. So that's either the local taxpayers have to pick it up, or we have to somehow manage to live off what we have now with losing 5% of our funding. And there's no way to do that. I mean, we have to.
That won't
how do
pay,
you do that?
there's no way.
Is this what you were talking about as far as last government?
Well,
Be hard
you know,
to get the president's job.
you're giving me an invitation.
No, just,
But, this is what happens when you have people centralized authority trying to dictate outcomes for everybody. They have I don't know what they're trying to accomplish, but this is a classic redistribution of wealth. I mean, districts that have high income that money is getting shuffled to districts with low income. And I talked with Mr. Strausser and said, our Springboro's schools aren't funded with income tax. We're funded with property tax. And property tax is based on valuation. So to judge our wealth based on income doesn't really reflect where most school districts, not just Springboro, where most school districts, school revenue comes from. And so I don't understand the shift. I think that, you know, they had some other goal in mind out there in the dark room where they did all this budget planning. They wanted some money to do something with. And I'm sure that they had a reason, and this is the outcome of that reason. But at any rate, that's, I guess, what I would suggest, Mr. Anderson, is that we invite our reps.
We'll do that. We'll see it. Okay. See if they come. Well, we'll convene for a work session. You want to take 5 minutes? And we'll do that. Come back in 5 minutes. You're gonna be up?
Get your checkbook
Yeah.
out. Get your checkbook out.
Sorry, I'm not bringing good financial.
I took a picture of the parking lot.
All right, we'll get started and turn the floor over to Andrew.
Good evening. I am here to talk to you about College Credit Plus, and this is a meeting that has been somewhat condensed from last evening's meeting with an audience of over 600 at the high school, so we had quite a showing. So I've condensed down last night's presentation so you don't have to sit quite as long to listen. College Credit Plus is the new name that the Ohio Board of Regents, in conjunction with the Ohio Department of Education, has come up with for youngsters in grades 7 through 12 who are eligible to take college-level courses. So this is the former post-secondary education options and dual enrollment rolled together. Why might a youngster participate? They have a few reasons they can participate. They can earn college credit at the same time as they're earning high school credit. There's a variety of coursework that they might be able to take at the college level that we don't offer here within the district. And it also can reduce their course load when they do go to college. So we have a number of students who take courses now with the hopes that when they go to college, they perhaps may not have to take 20 plus hours, but maybe reduce that down to 15. So depending on the number of hours they enter college with, may reduce the amount of hours they have to take while they're in college. The eligibility for this program, as I said, that may have surprised some of you, is that it is a 7 through 12 program. Previously, we were on a 9 through 12 program. From a standpoint of a public school district, we do not decide whether a student gets into the college or not. The area colleges or universities decide whether a student is college ready. We can advise our youngsters on our thoughts as to their readiness. However, that is up to the college to decide whether or not they allow them in. All students were advised last night, and parents, that an intent form is due by March 27th of this year. The actual date for the state of Ohio is March 30th, but we'll be on spring break then, so our students will be expected to bring their intent form on the 27th. That is a non-binding intent. Therefore, students bring it in if they're thinking about doing the program, but it does not tie them to the program. The costs, this is the part that I'm sure after our last conversation is not going to thrill you, but all responsibility lies within the school district. For costs, the Ohio Board of Regents has created a cost structure for the state of Ohio with a floor price of $40 and a ceiling price of $160, and that is per credit hour. Most of our students that take a course, it's a 3 credit hour course. We have students that go all day, all the way down to students who take 1 course at a time. We are also responsible for all textbooks for any courses students take. The family is responsibility for any student is transportation and tuition if a student is not successful in the course. As a board, I will ask you to help us to decide what the definition of success is. We've gone to several meetings with different colleges and universities in the area. Some of them define success as an A or a B. So we need to decide, is success, is a D or a C successful in a college course? So that's something that we need to make a decision as a district on. I do have some stars out here. When I get to more detail on cost structure, I'll go over what those stars are indicative of. As I said, floor pricing is $40, and I will announce to you that Sinclair, who we've worked very closely with over the years with PSEO and dual enrollment, is offering us a floor price of $40 per credit for their coursework. We also hosted Miami University and have a partnership with them, as well as Wright State, who are both offering us $160 per credit pricing.
Was that what they were before this started?
I'm gonna rely on Mrs. Floyd to explain the structure of
So
how.
in other words, they could choose to make it the ceiling
Yes,
when it might have been cheaper beforehand.
correct.
I find that interesting how that happens, and we don't have a choice.
Right, so we have one coming in at the floor and two coming in at the ceiling. I know this is hard to see. What I've done is I've taken the amount of students that we have this year that are enrolled in either dual enrollment or PSEO courses. So there's several different structures that College Credit Plus offers, and actually there are 5 different structures. One is an online course where it's taught by a university instructor entirely online. There's also where the student leaves our campus and goes to the college campus for instruction. We can also have our teachers, which we currently have a couple teachers now at the high school who are teaching dual enrollment as adjunct instructors through the colleges. And then the 5th type of program, you can have a hybrid program, which we have not participated in the past, but rather what that is where our teacher entertains our students on a daily basis on an online course that is taught by a university instructor. So there's 5 different methodologies for instruction. For our purposes, we've had students who go to the library and take a dual enrollment class, and we have our librarian oversee their work on a daily basis and serve as a liaison between the student and the college professor to make sure that they're logging in on a daily basis and that they're not having any struggles. We also have a couple teachers at the high school teaching courses as adjunct instructors through Sinclair or University of Cincinnati. So what I've done on this is I've shown the courses on the left here of how our students have participated this year. So that top tier you'll see is we have 71 students enrolled in AP US History this year, and they will be awarded by the end of the year 2 courses at 3 credits each, which at the new cost structure, if we went with Sinclair on that, would cost $17,040 in addition to that teacher's salary. We have 5 students who are in an Accounting 2 class that is combined with an Accounting 1. Those students are gaining 3 credit hours for the first semester of college accounting at a price of what would be equivalent at the floor price of $600 for a total of our teachers teaching those students a total of $17,640. We also have 4 online classes that are taught by Sinclair instructors this year. With next year's costing, we would be looking at $4,440. That's, in my opinion, somewhat bang for the buck because we already have the librarian in the library who's overseeing the students. And at $4,440, this particular group of students is being serviced and earning college credit and being educated at the same time at what I consider to be a reasonable price. And lastly, we have 187 students who are in an Introduction to Personal Finance class that we currently offer our parents to purchase credit through University of Cincinnati at a cost of around $300 this year. If we came into a partnership with Sinclair at that floor price, the cost of that would be $22,000 for an overall cost of $44,520. So we're looking at costs far in excess of what we're already paying. Mr. Petroni?
Sorry to interrupt, you made a comment. Do we teach AP US history?
We do teach AP US History, yes.
And is this different AP US history, or this is just aligned with the college credit?
This is aligned with the college credit and also follows the syllabus of the College Board AP program.
Which we probably would do anyway, but now we get the students get the benefit of the credit. Is that
Yes,
close?
yes, that's correct.
So you just made a comment though, plus teacher's salary. Does that mean that these numbers are actually higher, or you're already teaching?
This is in addition to what we're already paying our teacher to instruct.
Okay. Which there's nothing. So accounting we teach as well, correct?
Yes, yes, we're already teaching the accounting. So those top 2 courses are being taught by a Springboro teacher that has been hired as an adjunct instructor through Sinclair.
So last question, I think last time we talked about this, we had these, this is broadening options for the students versus the narrow bandwidth we had with just the Sinclair,
Yes.
Is that
Oh, it's broad.
Yeah.
It's broadening.
That broad, good, right?
Well, it's great for the
It's
kids,
great.
but highly expensive.
It's very expensive for the district.
So
Very
just my silly observation is that we have the Board of Regents passing on to us a great idea. Let's get our kids educated, maybe get them out of college soon, which reduces parents' college pay. And then we have the governor who controls the Board of Regents reducing our revenue, what we have to pay more to do with the Board of
You
Regents.
hit the nail on the head, yes.
And state
You got it
testing
exactly.
costs $200,000 this year, so let's all keep that in mind.
Costs
$200 million they spent for the state testing.
Oh, to make that test.
Correct. So
Yeah, no, I thought it was more than that.
it doesn't stay around, and it costs $200 million, and we're losing that much money for taxpayers. It's just like multiple layers of taxation, how I see it.
Well, I'm getting confused on this. I like this idea, and I guess I don't mind having, more parents having, we talked about this a couple of years ago, what can we do to enhance the, I mean, I just got, when I was, a friend graduated who I sponsored at OSU, and, sponsored him signing and co-signing his debt, which was amazing. So any way to reduce that for parents and teachers is great, but it seems like we're getting different for precise.
Yes, you are.
Sorry to interrupt. I apologize.
That's quite all right.
We are.
So this slide, as I said, is very small, and I kind of went over some of it with you. We have control over what happens on this slide. When I say we have control over this, we're still going to offer AP US History, whether we offer credit with the college and use our teacher as an adjunct, or whether we just offer high school credit. We have control over that $17,000. We have control over the $660 on the accounting. We have control whether or not we want to offer online courses within our library to students that are taught by adjuncts through Sinclair. And we also have control over whether we want to deliver credit to our students taking interpersonal finance. So this is where the board's control comes in financially. We do not have control, however, over our students who choose to go to a public university. So as I go through here, please be thinking of other questions. So our offering recommendations would be for students taking coursework on the campus. As I said, we cannot control that. I think we should encourage that if our students are ready. Students may also enroll in online coursework. As you saw, that was of minimal cost in the grand scheme of things for our students to be able to get some online credit. It also affords them the experience of learning how to be in an online course, which we don't have any other courses within our high school that are online brought to us by SHS teachers.
Andrew, if I could interrupt you just to make sure I'm understanding. So all these dual credit classes and online classes that we offer, there's a choice that we don't, like an AP history class, we don't have to offer it as dual credit, is that what you're saying?
We do not.
So
That's a
all the
choice
things
we've
we
made.
did to benefit kids, now we're put on the spot to either take that away or keep it. It's almost, how could you take it away? That's the question. So we would have to take it out of our course of study, so the kids couldn't sign up for it.
They would still take the course, they would still get the curriculum, it would still be taught by the same individual. They would not be walking out with a college transcript to go along with it.
But they could take the AP test.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And really, what you keep in mind, Board, all of them, correct me if I'm wrong, this is only good if they stay in the state of Ohio.
It is
Is that accurate?
guaranteed within the state of Ohio if they take an Ohio transfer module course.
So if they take all these dual credit courses and go to University of Kentucky, there's no guarantee they'll get credit for it.
They need to talk to the admissions department at the university that they're looking at going to see if they accept these credits. You can also go to www.transfer.org to check, and you can say, these are the courses that I took at this institution. This is the institution I want to go to after I'm finished with high school. Will you accept? And that site will allow you to be able to see, as you're making decisions on what courses to take, who will accept what credits.
So for me, I think the question is, and this is philosophical, is it the responsibility of the taxpayer to not only pay for a public education, but for classes in college as well? Because if we pay for all these, the tune of at least, well, PSEO is $140,000 this year, which is, are we still required to do that?
We are.
So, I mean, we're going to be out $250,000, $300,000, right? And they packed the auditorium last night. So the question is, do we still offer dual credit and things of that nature? Because technically now we're making taxpayers not only pay for the high school experience, but for the college experience as well. I don't even see how that's right that we can ask taxpayers to do that, because doesn't the Constitution talk about public education to some extent? So, well, it's going to be an issue. That's going to be the issue right there of how much are we going to pay.
The Ohio Constitution talks about public education.
Right.
And I guess the issue with dual credit is that we still have the teacher, and we're still using the classroom space, so we still have our regular cost, and in addition, we have some additional cost.
Yes.
Whereas in the traditional PEO, where we might have paid for them to go to that college, we did free up some classroom space, and we did take that student out of, we didn't have the expense of educating that particular student when they went out to the college. So I guess your question is, given the dual credit, we're getting the double whammy.
Oh, yeah.
I guess we have them anyway, though, right? I mean, if the student wasn't doing dual credit, I guess it's the incremental cost that you're showing us.
Right. That's the addition, which is significant.
From an eligibility standpoint, a student can take from 7th grade through 12th grade a total of 120 credit hours. That would equate to a maximum of 30 per year. The calculation, if you have a youngster that's debating whether or not to do this, I see a confusion on your face, and I'm going to go over that. The 30 is the max per year. And one might think, okay, if you can do this for 6 years, why might it not be 180? The Board of Regents is saying a max of 120 or a total of or a total of 30 per year.
That's a lot of.
That's a year.
So you can't do it for 6 years at the maximum because you'll max out. The calculation, if you're thinking about doing a half day at the college and a half day here, is any of our 1 period credit granting classes equate to an equivalent of 3 college courses. So if you're going to take 4 classes here, that 4 times the 3 hours equates to 12 hours. So now you are eligible to take a maximum of 18 at the university. So we're not going to have kids who are stressed out going, okay, I'm going to take my maximum of 30 and then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to take 3 or 4 classes at the high school. They can't overtake too many classes. So they're not going to be overly stressed from a standpoint of, can we maximize the 120 over our time in Springboro as well as take those classes at Springboro and still live our life at the high school. So that's how that works.
But they can choose to take those at the college.
Yes. They can go 1 class at the college. They can go up to 30 credit hours at the college for the year. Which schools participate? All public institutes of higher learning in Ohio are required to participate, so they do not have a choice. Private colleges and universities do have a choice. One of the questions that came up last night from a few parents is UD participating? They are not. So any private college or university has the option to choose to not participate. However, the publics all have to participate. Grades and credits, what's important to know if you're thinking about putting your youngster into a College Credit Plus class is that their grades will show up on their high school transcript, their grades will show up on their college transcript. The Collegiate Clearinghouse has access to any college course in the public institution in the state of Ohio. So it doesn't go away. So you can't, for instance, take a class at Wright State University and say, wow, that didn't go so hot for me, and I think I will apply to Ohio State and not tell them I ever went to Wright State. The Clearinghouse's availability within the entire nation's institutes of public education to find that transcript and see that. So it does not go away. There's nothing we can do as Springboro to say, well, they had a rough year, they had a car accident, they had an illness, etc. Can we just wipe this clean, call the university and get rid of it? We have no control over that.
And we have run into that.
Yes.
Multiple times.
Yes, we have. In fact, very recently we have. So that whatever course they take through College Credit Plus shows up on the transcript as it is. It also shows up on the high school transcript. It's figured into GPA and class rank. High school credits for AP are weighted at 10 points. Any College Credit Plus class has to have the equivalent weight of your highest level of course. Our highest level of course is an AP course, carries a weight of 10 points. Courses at the College Credit Plus level now will have to carry at any high school in the state of Ohio that 10 points or whatever the top point weight is within a high school. Ours is 10. Previous to College Credit Plus, a 3 credit hour class was the equivalent at Springboro High School of 0.6 credits. The new ruling from Ohio Board of Regents is that any class that is a 3 credit hour class is the equivalent of 1 Carnegie unit. A 4 credit hour class is the equivalent of 1 Carnegie unit. A 5 credit hour class is the equivalent of 1 Carnegie unit. So that is a change. What is our equivalent to a Carnegie unit, when we take a course and decide what is it worth, it has to have a minimum of 120 hours to award a Carnegie unit for a year-long course, or 60 hours for a semester. So a lot of discussion with the Ohio Board of Regents was how are you establishing that a 3 credit hour class is the equivalent of 120 hours? How do you establish that a 5 credit hour class is the equivalent of the same as a 3 credit hour class? There's been a lot of discussion on this with the Board of Regents. Financial considerations for you as a board. Year before last, we had $70,000 within our budget for PSEO dual enrollment. This year we budgeted $140,000. We came in mid-year right around the 70 mark, so that was a good budget figure. And we are looking at College Credit Plus for next year as a budget line item of $250,000, and I hope that figure will come in on the target that this year's figure of 140 did. We don't know. As I said, there were over 600 people at the meeting last night. Here are those stars for the notation that I brought up to you. Any youngster who is considered economically disadvantaged, eligible for free and reduced lunch, cannot be charged for a class that they were not considered successful or failed. If they ask for financial reimbursement for transportation, they can do that as well.
How do you, if they don't have success, how do you get them to pay?
Currently, under the PSEO, the college notifies us and we bill them, and that becomes a school fee. So we get a bill from the college for a student who drops a course or fails a course past the deadline, and then the family writes a check to our school system to reimburse us so that we can pay the college.
And so if they're on free reduced lunch, then we have to provide transportation if requested.
We have to reimburse for either provide or reimburse for transportation.
So do we need some type of policy or something that's going to outline what we reimburse? Is that just the state mileage rate?
Yeah, it would be in lieu of, yeah, transportation.
Wow.
That doesn't fall into the other transportation policy we have for kids who go to other schools outside the district?
Does not. Non-financial considerations, as I brought up earlier, what grade determines success? So we need to determine that. And that will be the end.
So disadvantaged schools in Ohio may get more money from state funding, but then the school district has to turn around and pay all the transportation for the disadvantaged students if they want to go to college.
Yes. Or any questions?
Is the state reimbursing this has got to be a lot, I know it's high for us, because we never paid it before, but I'm just thinking the colleges, their cost per credit hour is a lot higher than this. So I bet there's a lot of colleges that are looking at this and figuring out, you know, these kids come with college credits, that means we can't charge what we normally charge, which is probably 2 or 3 or 4 times that.
Well, they limit their seats too.
Some are more willing to work with us
It's
than
gonna affect their
others.
revenue.
That's
That's why I'm thinking UD doesn't wanna do it. Why, not picking on UD, but UD doesn't wanna do it because their college costs are a lot higher. And they would just be cannibalizing themselves in Miami.
I wonder if your point, though, is.
So I just wondered if the state is
Subsidized.
gonna reimburse them.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of heading.
There's a section in the governor's proposed higher education. I didn't go through it because it didn't apply, but
My
I'd be interested to look through it to see if there's.
my guess is they're probably getting,
Yeah.
I mean, Miami is 20,000 years.
Well, I think what we run the risk of, now, if they're in athletics, right now, they have to have 5 classes a day to be able to participate in extracurricular activities. Would these college classes be equivalent to 5 classes a day if they take those instead of being on campus?
A 3 credit hour class would be the equivalent of 1 high school. So they would have to take 3 credit, they would have to take 15 credit hours, which is the max they can take per semester, or 30 for the course of the year.
So we're running, I mean, just thinking, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just thinking out loud since we're here in board meeting. We could have 30% of our kids decide to go to college, yet we're still gonna have 100% of the staff. I mean, our costs are gonna go through the roof.
Yes.
Well,
Potentially.
yeah,
Yeah.
let's not run, because I think it's a great opportunity for kids to get and our staff to be able to provide a higher level. So I think we have to always stay focused on that. The question is, how do you manage it?
And we do, I mean, there are a lot of social, emotional concerns as well when we bring in 7th and 8th graders. We do a great job, and I know that as a board, you've had a lot of questions over the course of the year when it came to, gosh, does every parent have to be fingerprinted to help in my child's classroom? And they go to the university, they go to the college, nobody's fingerprinted. They're sitting next to people who cannot be kept out of a college class for any felony background they may have. We're looking at discussions that are occurring in an adult setting with very young children. Perhaps they might want to take an art class. You can't decide who's going to be the model in that art class that they're going to be painting and what they might be wearing. So there are a lot of considerations when it comes to our very young children, particularly those in 7th and 8th grade, that we want to give strong consideration to, that go way beyond financial implications of, gosh, they got a great jump start on college when they were in 7th grade. So from a protection standpoint, we're not going to get in the way of any students taking part, but from a parental standpoint, we want our parents to be well aware that they're walking into an adult world. They're not walking into a safe environment where we know that any adult that's around them has been fingerprinted, that's safe to be in their presence. So those are other considerations that we don't want to ignore as a school system as we're advising and counseling our students as to whether or not this is a good
Just spent an
idea.
hour talking about the board having the ability to control curriculum. Are they gonna be held responsible if we send them to some sociology class in college that discusses things that we certainly wouldn't discuss with
Nope.
them?
We have no control over that, and they made it very clear at these meetings, there will be no exemptions for topics that may or may not be appropriate for different ages within the group.
You may want to look at one of our policies and make sure it doesn't hold the district liable in any way either, or something like that. Because, I mean, you're right, college classes today, we'll talk
Well,
about.
reporting student progress alone, that policy needs to, there's a couple that we're going to need to work at.
Weekly eligibility we won't be able to control because we don't get weekly reports from the colleges, nor can we require a college professor to give us weekly reports for our own athletic programs.
So just to clear my, the intent letter, what did you call it, the March 27th deadline document, that is a parent interested in a child's participation that goes to somewhere, the school district or to the university to accept that student because of something. Is that what that letter is?
No, that letter, that allows the school system to know how many students that we have that are interested in participating in College Credit Plus programs, whether they're online or whether they're attending the colleges.
So for me to go to college, I had to get accepted.
Yes.
Somebody had to let me in. Oh, yeah, it did happen.
They do have an online, most of the schools are switching to an online process of application. And that process includes admission criteria such as ACT scores or college admission AccuPlacer type tests. So I know Sinclair uses an AccuPlacer, Wright State uses a different test, Miami uses yet a different test where the student makes an appointment with the admissions office. They go in, they take an online assessment that shows whether or not they are deemed college ready by that individual institution.
So trace in the rabbit hole a bit about the 7th and 8th grader. How do they achieve that success or that standard?
They have likely not taken an ACT or an SAT at that point. They're very young.
Yeah.
So they would make an appointment with whatever university or college they're interested in participating with, and they will do a placement test at their Office of Admissions on campus.
So that institution would have to decide for its $120, if that's all it's getting, or $40, take a 7th grader to participate in what class would that 7th grader have available? Every class in the institution?
That's a good question. College Credit Plus is open for any class that is considered non-remedial and non-religious based. So they couldn't take a class, the study of the Bible, the New Testament. Or they couldn't take a remedial math class to get them caught up to the college level. But every other course is available out of their course catalog.
Every course, so biology.
Correct.
101. 7th grade take biology as an science yet. So it seems like there would be some checks and balances maybe built into the nominal concern for the 7th and 8th graders, I think, not knowing our entire 7th and 8th grade population, if we have geniuses that are so far up that they will excel and be invited to every school, which would be wonderful, that's an option. But it seems like there's something there, I guess, is what I'm just trying to understand.
Yes, so reading, writing, and a math test.
And they would be held theoretically to the same standard as someone coming into
Yes.
school right out of 12th grade?
Yes. If they have a score that would put them in a remedial class, that is not funded through College Credit Plus. So we do not have to pay for any remedial classwork.
So that's a pretty smart child in 7th grade with not even 9 remedial conversation.
We're interested to see how many of those we get.
Yeah.
I mean, so seriously, I mean, that test and that standard would be the same as if 12th graders planning to go into college. There's not going to be any variations under this CC program that has any flexibility or...
No, the 12th grader that takes that test might be placed into a remedial class. If you are a 7th through 12th grade student that's going to be taking College Credit Plus classes, if you place into the remedial class, you're not going to make it in. So we do have students who graduate from here that take remedial classes before they dive into their college coursework. We do not fund those through College Credit Plus.
I'm just trying to think, there's no loophole in this College Credit Plus program that says that a 7th grader will be tested more leniently.
No.
Or Physics 101.
No, they don't have to differentiate.
No, they do not.
If I could ask,
Yeah, I'm done trying.
what I'm worried about, I worry about the day-to-day on some of this. If we have superstar basketball player, and they're taking a college class, and they take, because in college, they only take maybe 2 tests a quarter, and they take the first test and fail it, and they're ineligible. But they're not going to take another test for 5 or 6 weeks. What parents need to know up front is there is not one thing we can do as a district to deal with that eligibility. That's what I've been worried about study testing. We have 3 straight weeks, and if one of our kids fail a test, and then for 3 weeks they test, we could truly hold up a huge, monumental time for some of these kids. So I want the parents to know up front, because the parents we've dealt with, when they didn't know their kids weren't going to class or whatever, we can't change it. It is out of our control. We relinquish that control. So if we have Miss Basketball America and fails the first test and he or she's ineligible for 6 weeks, we can't change it.
So when do you need some conversation on the non-financial considerations of the rest? It seems like that's yesterday.
The program starts in August, so we'll want to get that done relatively quickly here.
But we just found this information out on December 18th.
Yes. And the last meeting I had was this morning, was with Wright State. So the gentleman from Wright State came in and I met with him this morning. So we're finding out more and more information, at least on a weekly basis.
Have they voted on this yet? The final vote?
Yes.
And I'm not, don't take the question to be like, oh, we're behind the ball. I'm asking if we need some discussion tonight on financial considerations, because I'm prepared to say B or better is fine by me, and because I think this is not going B+ or better is fine by me, because it's a distinguished opportunity that we're providing, and that distinguished opportunity is something that if we're going to invest in our students' future and our parents' future, that I think the standard should be high. And we've been consistent with the Springboro standard for years. I mean, and I'm definitely not into the proficient definition that a person who gets proficient on this would be someone I would want to be subsidizing their college education, would be my opinion.
One of the meetings that we went to, they said if a student has 2.0 or below, they get put on probation. So the college does not see us as successful. So that's a conversation to have. Whereas we may have a high school student that's working up as high as their ability allows them to have, and they get a C, and we say, go get them, you did a great job. So that's a conversation that we need to have. And I think your point is well taken, that if they're choosing to take college classes, our expectations of them are that they're going to excel in those college classes.
What I'd like to see is that we put together a recommendation for the board to consider on should we offer these courses or not. Have some teachers and parents on this committee to really talk about this so that we can start looking at what we're going to offer. Because I mean, if it's in 7th and 8th grade, are we going to offer online courses in 7th and 8th grade? We really need to look at this because the questions are going to start rolling in. And last night we had, what, 600 parents at this meeting?
Over 600.
Is that typical for that meeting?
No.
So that's the hard part here to put a trigger on. We're thinking 250,000, but 600 parents signed up. We could be off $500,000.
I have a question. Are you going to determine success as to mean the parents have to then pay back?
Right.
If the board passes that they have to have a B or better, and then they get a C or a D, that means that at that point we would be able to bill them for that.
Correct.
Yeah, taking that aside, I still think it's expectations. I think that's regardless of who pays what.
Well, I think that's what we need. We need to establish what success is in order to determine if we end up paying for the class in the end. We have to pay for it up front, but if whatever we do is not successful, that means parents have. So that might make a parent decide whether they really want their kid to enroll or not. If they know my child can go to college, if they get, under this college credit plus, but if they get a B or under, I'm going to have to pay for these classes back. So that might alter whether a parent decides to let their child participate.
Well, and there's the sports, and we really are not ABCDF, right? We're numerical. So
We're numerical.
So we have to pick like 85%, 87% or something.
But colleges don't do that.
No, the colleges do A, B, C, D, F. So if we have a student who gets a B on their college transcript, for us that has, up till this point, translated to an 89, so our highest B, an 89 on their high school transcript. With the extra 10 points, that would push them into 99 range. So it carries a 10-point weight.
So, part of this is mandatory, though, or I shouldn't say mandatory. Part of this is not within our discretion, right?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
if they want to go to the university, we don't have anything to say about that.
Correct.
So part of the, I guess, reason to offer the classes here is the students would stay here. Right? And if we didn't offer them here, we might have more choose to go to campus, but maybe some would choose, I don't know. But that's a factor, right? I'm sure if we said no online or no dual credit, that we would see more go off campus.
Not as much. We don't. A lot of the kids who don't take PSO will say it's the having to leave campus. Their parents aren't comfortable with them driving.
Yeah,
Things of that nature.
I think the transportation is probably the biggest hurdle there. But did I hear you say that we're required to provide transportation in some cases?
In cases of economically disadvantaged.
If requested.
And then you weighed in on what you thought the bar ought to be. I mean, I think part of this is that we want there's a challenge for some students. There's a challenge of 100 college level class. I would hate to put the bar so high that we discourage kids from wanting the challenge, or wanting to try the challenge. Because if they don't meet whatever standard we set, they lose, I mean, we don't pay, they pay, and then do they lose the credit also? I mean, if we said it takes a B.
No, if the college awards the credit, we award the credit with them.
Okay, so.
I'm gonna have to check on the payment portion as far as success goes.
I'd like to know what other districts are doing too, so
Yeah, we need to do some
not
research
doing
on
something
that.
out of the ordinary.
I guess
And we want to make sure that we're within the guidelines that were set forth for us.
off the top of my head, I would think that the college's criteria for what success is probably what I'm driving. If they say a C is not successful, but a C plus is, then I would think that that is probably a good standard, just off the top of my head. I would disagree with Mr. Petroni that it ought to be more rigorous than that. I don't want to see kids shy away from it because, shy away from a challenge because they, we put that bar too high.
Because the other side of that is, I would agree with Mr. Petroni, that it should be a B, and I think, and I wouldn't say it, think of it as punitive, I would think that they're probably not ready. And the way this is set up, I don't know why everybody wouldn't push their kid to try this, but, so, I think making it a B and then making him realize, well, maybe he wasn't ready, so we won't do it. Because, I don't know, on the other hand, if they want to pay for it, for a C, I guess they pay.
I think an A or B is sufficient.
But I don't see it, punitive or B. I just see it as.
I don't think punitive is the right word, but I think it would cause some students to shy away from the challenge. Well, I'd like to try it, but gee, I gotta make sure that I get a B or there'll be some ramification to that. So I think it does discourage people from stepping out of their comfort zone.
Still get a credit, but it does give you, see, I would just think the opposite. I think it is a challenge. It needs to be a challenge. It needs to be, I forget what David said a little while ago, but expectation. I don't think that's bad for these kids.
I think a lot of parents say that to their kids. You either get an A or B or we're not paying. I mean, to me, that would say the parents are going to be behind the kids making sure that they go, which is going to eliminate a lot of our issues of now they're ineligible. Why is this always going to be on? It just makes the child more accountable the more rigorous we make the accountability level of an A or a B.
The other thing I thought of, we just had a discussion, you're right, about an hour ago about supposedly the haves and have-nots, 280 or 300 haves, 300. I just wonder, there again, we're moving towards the 300 have-nots, supposedly. Now the parents don't have to pay for this, and the school districts do. I mean, it's all the same thing. We're moving towards people who the state probably feels like can't afford to afford for their kids to do this. Now they don't have to worry. So we've taken those 300 that were in that category, and now we've made something reachable for them. And along the lines that maybe Mr. Petroni was saying, is that right? I mean,
yeah,
because of people like Springboro and our district, we probably, I mean, you've been doing it, you can afford, most of them can afford it, not everybody. But if you're in some districts that don't have what we do, I'd say their percentage of people taking these courses is a lot less, but now it's all open.
Transfer of our money leaving our.
And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because there are kids that can't afford it, that are probably intelligent, and this is a great opportunity for them.
Well, I think kind of piggyback on, if you look at the big picture, we're wanting to get Americans more educated, it's a great idea, but it comes back to what the governor's saying is, based on your wealth, you're going to pay more to educate Americans to some extent. So, because there will definitely be more kids taking college classes.
And I'm not saying that's bad.
No,
I'm just
in the long term,
saying the big picture is that we're subsidizing everybody. So, anyway.
Andrew, thank you. Very thorough, because I know you've only had a couple months to do it, and we've talked about it, but it is very confusing, so.
Been a lot of meetings.
And there were a lot of parents at that meeting last night, so. But to set a target budget, David, you're right, we've talked about that, and that's why we somewhat projected 250,000. But that's only $100,000 more than we're currently paying. The question is that enough? So I guess on March 27th, we'll have a good estimation on how many classes they're going to take, but they still aren't required to take them until when? August?
We won't know till August, when they bring their schedules in from the colleges to show us they are enrolled, and then we will pull them out of our high school classes. So they all sign up for 7 periods for next year, and then if they choose to go to the colleges or universities, we take them out of those classes, lowering those class sizes.
So if that rumor gets out there, we have a high school with 15 kids a class or lower, we can't control that now because we'll be starting school by the time the colleges even
Right. They're all
sign the
starting.
kids up.
So you just solved your overcrowding problem?
I'm sorry. Only you would think of that. Well, you have a point. Undercrowding might be the.
Only if they go to the college, right? If they're still here, they're still here.
So we need to come with a recommendation on, do we want to offer these classes? What's the AP going, what's the criteria going to be? But we do need to look at what other districts are doing, so it doesn't look like we're being over the top strict.
Okay. Any public participation?
I just have a question. Can we incent students to go to Sinclair as opposed to the other ones?
We're gonna give them a sweatshirt.
I mean, is it legal to do that?
We can advise them as to who's worked best with our students and where our students have been most successful. Sinclair is also offering an incentive for students who gain 30 credit hours by the time they graduate. They're looking at a $3,000 scholarship for them if they choose to further their education with Sinclair. So Sinclair is offering the floor price and incentives for our students to attend, whereas we're not seeing that with anybody else we're working with.
I would love to see that, but I think Sinclair's offerings are kind of limited. My memory is.
I think they have a decent set of introductory courses that you would typically see a freshman in college taking.
Oh, then I'm thinking of something different. The online stuff is our limited offer.
Yes, the online is definitely limited,
Okay.
but they're on-campus courses. You get a nice mix.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I have one more question. What incented our APUSH teacher to do the dual credit? Like, is he getting a cut from the university? Because if we're paying
No.
to the university, so the university just gets this money and does nothing for it, correct?
Basically,
We pay
yeah,
him.
that's correct. The university gets the money, they create a transcript, our teacher takes care of all the paperwork. Our teachers are not allowed to accept payment in any form from any other entity while they're teaching during their contract hours here. The only thing that our teachers get out of it, one might think, is that they have an additional item on their resume showing that they're an adjunct instructor at a local college or university.
But on the flip side of that,
Their ability to recover that by having them,
right,
when they graduate, go pay the full price.
we fill their seats up with $160 when they could be charging $300, and they lose too. More than we do, actually.
The teachers that are adjunct instructors have to have 30 credit hours beyond their bachelor's within the field of study. So if you are a social studies teacher and you go back after your bachelor's, it necessitates you to have 30 credit hours within the field of history if that's what you're teaching. The Montgomery County area consortium has put together a program for teachers to become certified to teach as adjuncts, whereby they can go to UD, which is interesting since UD is not participating in College Credit Plus, but they'll take our teachers and educate them. UD or Wright State, if they get 18 credit hours within the field, they will certify them as adjunct within the subject area, whereas it's always been 30 before.
All right, we need to definitely get into executive session,
So, any other business? No. All right, item 10.1, executive session. Consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official preparing for conducting or reviewing negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second? Second. Roll call. Mr. Petroni? Dave? Mr. Stuckey? First read it.
Regano?
Yes.
Petroni? Malone?
Yes.
Anderson?
Oh, I thought you said
Yes.
plug.